Hey everyone, today I have with me Alyssa Hammond. She is the Director of Undergraduate Career Education and Outcomes at Bentley University. In addition to being a career services professional with over 20 years of experience in higher education, Alyssa is a lawyer, a certified strengths coach, has hosted her own podcast called Counteroffer, and has taught upper-level courses about business and social media at Bentley. Welcome to the show, Alyssa.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, so how did you imagine your career path being back when you were at Syracuse in college and undergrad?
Well, very different than where I am today, that's for sure. It started, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Before I went to Syracuse, when I was probably, 10, 11 years old, my father was a small business owner in a family business, and he would say to me all the time, listen, this is a really difficult life. I don't want you to do what I do. I want you to do something that's, stable and professional. And he kept driving that word home, professional. It's got to be professional. And, back in the early 80s, I know I'm aging myself, but that's fine. In the early 80s, that really only meant one of two things, believe it or not, which was be a lawyer or be a doctor, at least in my mind. And I hated the sight of blood, so why not be a lawyer? Hey, that makes sense. My parents were like, yeah, that sounds great to us. And you're smart, you're articulate, you debate, you certainly know how to argue with us. And it's a well-paid profession, so why not go for it? So they were very, very happy with that decision. And so,
isn't that funny? I feel like I got a similar talk, right? They're trying to lift you up. They're like, you're really good at debating with us, right? And then they're pushing that into, this is what you should be for your career.
Right, exactly. And I see it all the time now. I mean, I see it constantly in terms of that parental guidance, if you will. And and we'll probably get to that a little bit later in terms of how to ignore that. Giving kids permission to ignore what their parents say about them. But anyway.
Welcome to college. Yes, exactly. Welcome to college.
Welcome to college. And so as it related to my experience, I very much wanted to go to Syracuse, and I was grateful that I got in. And when I got there, my whole goal was to get into law school. That was my sole purpose, was to, major in the right things, do all the right activities, do everything that I possibly could do to line myself up to get into law school. And again, kind of dating myself, that was the late 80s, early 90s. And that was when the first Great Recession really happened. So getting into grad school was extremely difficult to get in because there were no jobs. And so that's naturally what happens on a downturn economy, is that everybody runs to grad school. And so that being the case, I knew I had to really, focus on that. And so I recall very vividly going to my career services office, my own career services office there, and saying, I want to go to law school. And they were like, great, this is what you do. And I did it. So I, took all the right courses. I majored in political philosophy and American studies. There were like 11 people in the major. I mean, the school's 30,000 people. I had 11 people in the major. I mean, because I thought it was very lawyer school. It was like very lawyerly, if you will. I did the activities. I interned at law firms during my summers when I was home. I interned at criminal law firms, real estate, juvenile, you name it. I put myself in that environment because I wanted to make sure that that was the right decision for me, which is the ironic thing about it, is that I actually did all the right things and luckily got into law school. So I went to, it's called New England Law Boston now, but back in the day it was New England School of Law in Boston. And I went there and I had a great experience. I loved it. I loved going to law school. I loved, the whole idea of practicing. And again, did the internships, did the clerkships, the whole 9 yards, had a job when I graduated from law school. Again, very hard to come by at that point in time. And I had it. And, when I ask students the question of how long do you think I lasted, the answers range from, 2 weeks to 3 years. And, and the reality was that I lasted about 18 months after all of that. And, looking back at my experience at Syracuse and knowing what I know now, and this is certainly not to throw Syracuse under the bus by any stretch, but because career services has evolved so much since that time, is that, it used to be very directive. This is what you do, instead of why do you want to do that? Why do you want to be a lawyer? And really asking harder questions and making students really answer them. Because to be quite honest with you, if someone had asked me really, why I was wanting to go to law school and being a lawyer, I would have said, oh, because LA law, man. I want to be Grace Van Owen, who is like this hot prosecutor on this TV show, and walk around with, these great suits and yell objection and make a lot of money and have a hot boyfriend. And, it's a great life. And I didn't really understand what it was really all about. And I didn't understand how that career was helping or hindering what made me who I was. And so, fast forward, so I had a midlife crisis. I was 26 years old. And I couldn't even get out of my house because I was physically ill from the thought of going to work. And so I understand what it's like to really be in that desperate place. And I quit without even having a job to go to. I quit. I went on unemployment, and I was like, I have to save myself before I go too far down this path. And so I went back to my career services office at New England and went to them and sought guidance. And they, and they really helped me to take a step back to really understand what was not working for me and what was working for me. And it really was a strengths issue, because I'm a strengths coach. And now again, it's kind of like, oh, aha, like, it's like hindsight is 20/20.
Right. Now you see all the answers. But when you were in it, to be in it, to have that feeling of not wanting to go to work, right? Everyone else that is searching for a job might be like, oh, you're so fortunate to have had this incredible, right? You were doing everything the right way, to be lining yourself up for success. And then really hitting that peak of success, which was your goal, was to start as a lawyer. And you did it, right? You graduated law school, you got that job. But no one really fully grasps until they experience that, which is when you do get what you thought you wanted, and it doesn't pan out to be what you actually want. What does that feel like? And it's debilitating. It's awful. Yeah,
it's really hard. And a lot of it has to do with self-awareness about who you are and what makes you naturally good at what you do. And so a lot of people don't have that self-awareness as to why do I do what I do, number one, and why do I do what I do really well without really thinking about it.
Well, it surprises me because it seems like you were enjoying the journey, or were you just kind of checking things off as you were going? Because like you were doing all the checkpoints, like you were going to the internships and showing up. Was it just, you were like, oh, that's going to be different when I'm a lawyer?
Well, that's an excellent way to kind of tee this up, because I took StrengthsFinder, a million years later, and I realized that my top 5 strengths, 4 of the 5 definitely said that I should be a lawyer. I'm strategic. I have communication. I'm an achiever, which means I like to work very hard and I like to check the boxes. I like to get things done. I'm a maximizer. So I'm about, yep, there it is. We actually love to write things down that we've already done just to get satisfaction of crossing it off of our list. That's what
I write multiple lists today. So if you're listening to the audio, you're not seeing, but I'm showing my notebook with like multiple lists, and it's so fun to cross that off. Yes,
it feels good. It's satisfying.
Relate to the high achiever, and I don't know if you know, but my first job was also an experience similar to that, where I felt like I was dying a slow death. Like, I know this sounds so dramatic, but just to go to those meetings that I was in. I was a government consultant, and it was so boring. I just didn't know work could be so boring. Right. And I thought it was going to be this creative environment where I was going to be this consultant and solving big problems and using Six Sigma tools and strategies. And it really just wasn't any of that.
No. And probably a lot of it has to do with your own strengths. Because when people would ask me, why didn't it work out for you? Because it wasn't that I was bad at my job. I was actually really good at my job. And I kind of held on to the one piece of the puzzle to really tell you why. I was a divorce lawyer, and my number 2 strength is positivity, which means that I like to make people happy. I like to bring people up. You give me a piece of bad news, I'm going to give you the silver lining, or, it's not that bad, or, it could be worse. I'm that person. And so, back then, when people would ask me, why did it work out for you? I'd say, because I just can't be a nice person. And that literally was my answer. I can't be a nice person doing this job. There's too much animosity. It's too adversarial. people want to fight all the time. I want them to feel happy, and they want to fight. I mean, that's what divorce is about initially, is there's a lot of emotion and anger, and nobody wants to get along. Everybody wants to fight. And so that basic problem with what I was doing was literally my undoing. And it was squashing my positivity to the point where I literally was walking around going, I can't be a nice person. And I can't be not a nice person. And, even other lawyers would be like, you know what, you're too nice. You're too nice. You're too, rose colored glasses or whatever. And so it was that, and also that achiever that we just talked about, that crossing off the list and getting a lot of things done. The other problem with it was that I wanted things to be over. When the divorce was over, I wanted them to go away and just live their lives and be happy. And what was happening was that wasn't. They would come back. They were always coming back. And lawyers want that. That's how they make their money. But for me, I'm like, why are you back? What is wrong? This person isn't doing what they want, I need them to do, or, they didn't take the kids, or they're not paying me. And that sense of completion never was there. And so, like I said, it wasn't until, 15 years later when I really recognized why it turned into an epic fail. And I also realized that I really enjoyed being the clerk. I really enjoyed the executing phases of it. I liked the research. I liked the strategy, but I did like the communication, but I like the communication in a different way. So that's why it really did not work out for me. And that's why what I do now, it's so critical for me to be talking to people, students, whoever, to say, you can't ignore you can't ignore one thing. So, all of our students take StrengthsFinder, and they know their top 5. And so, they'll come in and they'll say, oh, I want to be an accountant. And I'll say, why? How, what did you wake up one morning and say, oh, I'm going to be an accountant? Where did that come from? And like your story and mine, a lot of it does come from, very well-meaning parents and family.
Gonna say parents.
Right? Saying you're really good at math.
They
right?
plant the seed, and it is well-meaning. It is well-meaning. I think it's so interesting. It came down to your values, right? You really value positivity. It's something that's one of your principles within you, and you can't really go against that on a daily basis. If you feel that intrinsically, I'm with you right there. Like that sounds maddening to go in every day and knowing that you're working with people who are fighting, and you're like, I want to mediate this, right? Like, can't we all see the silver lining here? Well, so how, in that moment, feeling like I can't go into the office again, how do you make that pivot? What was that like? I mean, I bet that probably you felt the taste for the first time of maybe a feeling of failure, or letting people down. I mean, all that education. I think a lot of people, sometimes they even just go through their 4 years and feel like, oh, I'm not sure why I got this degree. Like a lot of looking back. And that can really sting. And I hope you know that I'm not saying that where I do think I think everything is transferable. I think everything that you've done up to that point matters and is a positive thing. I see it like that.
Yeah.
But when you're in that moment, what did that feel like?
It was terrifying, but it was a relief. It was a relief. At the time I was engaged, and my parents paid for my entire education. So if you can imagine, what you just said is exactly right. Calling them and saying, guess what, guys? After 7 years of education, sitting and taking the bar, getting a job, getting paid, and living on my own, I'm walking away from it. And here's why. And I was very fortunate that they were extremely understanding and never held it against me, and just knew that I was going to figure it out and continue to support me however way they could. And my future husband was like, wow, I thought I had it made. What'd you do? What'd you do to me? I thought I had it right here. I was marrying a lawyer. I'm going to be the one to stay at home with the kids. I'm going to be the one to not have to do, the high paying job because you're it. And then I'm like, no, guess what? I'm out. I'm tapping out now. So it was scary, but it was also, like I said, it was liberating. It was, I was happy I wasn't feeling sick to my stomach all the time, and I could actually eat a meal and not feel sick. And I gave myself the permission to really dig into who I was and what and not only who I was, but what do I value? What are my values? What environment do I want to be in? What matters to me? I wanted certain things in my life that I wasn't getting. And so it just it opened all these doors for me. And, to be honest with you, it was really difficult to find a job. No one was even interested in interviewing me because when I figured out that I wanted to go into higher education, I wanted to actually go into admissions. And I would apply for these very entry-level admissions counselor positions, and no one would give me the time of day. Clearly, because I was overeducated, I probably wanted more money than what they were willing to pay me, and they probably thought I wanted their job because I was a lawyer, right? And so, I was probably this ambitious person. And so I kind of self-taught myself that I have to go out and meet people and do informational interviewing and networking so that way they can get past all that and really see who I was and that I'm really genuinely interested in this work and, I'm not a threat. I want to help. And it got to a place where I was like, you know what? Every time I was in a moment where I needed experience and I couldn't get paid for it, I always volunteered. And that's what I did. And so after a lot of fails and, like every other kid, we apply, nothing happens. Talking to people, somewhat helpful. I went back to New England and I walked into the admissions office and I said, I'm an alum. I'm interested in working in admissions and I'm willing to volunteer. And it was like the clouds parted and the sun shone down. And I'll never forget it. The director of admissions literally walked up to the desk and said, "This is karma." That was a direct quote. "This is karma. This is fate. I'm about to lose somebody for medical leave for 6 weeks. I was literally about to call a temp agency. So not only can you help me, but I can pay you."
Oh my gosh.
I'll take it. Yeah. And honest to God, it was one of the greatest moments of my life. And I was doing like the crap work. You know what I mean? Like I was doing nothing sexy. I was processing applications. I was answering angry calls from parents and, it was nothing glamorous by any stretch, but it gave me the exposure. It showed them that I was true to my objectives and what I really wanted, and that I was there to do the hard work. And I did what my father always told me to do, which is make yourself indispensable, and they'll never want you to leave. And that's what I did. And when the 6 weeks were over, the director said, "I want to keep you. I can't let you go. I don't have anything for you for about 6 months. So I'm just going to keep floating you around the school until something opens up." And so sure enough, I was doing a temporary gig in financial aid, and an opening in career services came up. Low person on the hierarchy, recruiting coordinator. I threw my hat in the ring, and because I was there and because people knew me and they knew, what I was about, I got the job. And that 18-month period that I was talking about before, I was in my old job for 18 months and then I quit. Well, 18 months later, I became the director of the office. So wow. It was the most amazing, transformation. And it all came through because I was willing to put myself out there and volunteer because I knew that I need the experience to the next level. And I was willing to do whatever it needed to do to get it. So, and it paid off. And then to your initial question about kind of, being in college and being in grad school and realizing kind of oh my God, I made a dreadful mistake, right? And so what I realized in that job, and I was there for 10 years, is that about 5 years in, I was getting those students coming in at second year saying, "What am I doing here? I hate it. What am I doing?" And I thought, well, what's happening on the undergrad level that's not stopping you from coming here? Because that's a real bad place, is to be halfway through a program and then realize, holy crap, this is not right. I mean, and there are ways to make it right. I mean, I'm obviously a very good example of that, and that you can do anything with a law degree, but I thought, you know what, I've got to get to the root source, which is undergrad, and saying, why do you want to go to law school? Someone should have asked me why, because if you start to really peel back the layers as to why people say they want to do things, again, the answers are not necessarily the best ones. And then it begs the question, what do you really want to do? And it's okay if the answer is, I don't know, because that's what we're here for, is to help you figure it out. But, and they're so dreadfully afraid to say, I don't know, or to go against what people think they should be. And it's kind of like, we give them permission to do that.
At our editorial meetings, I ask my editors, what's your why? I want to know why they want to be editors at College Magazine and in this internship position, because if you can come back to your why, that's very motivating. And I know that they all have a why for being there. And I think that's awesome, but sometimes we lose sight of it. So I think at any point that you're on, even if you think that you're like, oh, I'm proud of where I am, I want to be here, but to come back to your why and to question it, I love that, and dig deeper. And it really comes down to like hitting the pause button. Sometimes we're just going through the motions, you know, checking off those boxes.
The boxes, yep.
And succeeding.
You're
right?
an achiever, you like to do that.
Right, getting that next grade, passing that next class, getting to the next level. And that's kind of the scary thing about after the college experience is it's not levels, really. It's you're climbing. I like to think of the metaphor as like you're climbing up this mountain. You're not really leaving the mountain. You're just continuing to climb. And so those 7 years of you studying and law school, that's all relevant, transferable experience that contributes to what you're doing now. And you're just continuing to grow. You didn't go backwards. You didn't fall down this mountain. But yeah, I think that it just builds upon it. And so I think that it's just kind of all how you frame it, right? Are you failing or are you learning? And I think that we're learning.
Yeah. I mean, failure is good. Resilience is great. Grit is awesome. I mean, all of it. And when you fail, if you get back up and you try again, then you're building those very important skills, is that resilience. It's almost like, to kind of play up on your mountain climbing analogy, we all hit plateaus. The fails are more like you're losing your footing a little bit. You take a couple of steps backwards, and then to make it to that next summit, to get to the next summit. And some summits you're going to stay on for a really long time, right? Some summits you're going to love the view because of the people or the work or the environment or whatever. And then something else is going to pique your interest, and there you go. And then you move up. And it's not moving up, it can be moving in a different direction. Right? It doesn't necessarily need to be upwards. It can be outwards. Right? So,
I love that too. And realizing the areas where you do need experience and walking in and saying, I'm here to volunteer. That is so bold and courageous. I don't want to, I'm already written that down to like tell everyone here right now, like if you don't have a job and you're looking for a job, can you set aside that societal pressure of I need this paying job and just go and get the experience that you want to be doing what it is that you want, because that metaphor, that description that you painted of like that the skies opened and like it just felt amazing, like to go and do that and things kind of aligned. I think that's what happens when you are living more intentionally and going after what it is that you want, whether or not it's in this exact box of being paid and it has a title to it. But if you're involved with it, if you're part of that community and you knew that you wanted to be part, and how did you make that realization that you wanted to be part of higher education?
It's funny because when I went back to New England's Career Services office and I said, help me, I don't know what I'm doing. They gave me a book. And it literally was called What You Can Do with a Law Degree. And it was by an author named Deborah Aaron, who has passed away many, many years ago. And that makes me sad because I would love to have met her and thanked her, because the book literally changed my life, because it said literally that I can do anything with this degree. And I'm telling you, Amanda, I do not regret one thing I've ever done. I loved going to Syracuse. I loved my degree programs. I loved everything that I did, even though I did it in the name of getting to that next place. It's almost like I'm grateful that was the motivation, because it really made me do more than what I might have done. I don't know if that makes sense, but just knowing that I needed to get involved on campus, just knowing that I needed to work on certain skills, just knowing these things really pushed me out of my comfort zone. I mean, I joined the crew team. I was a D1 athlete. I'm like 5'1", and I'm a coxswain on the crew team. I was an editor for our school newspaper, and Syracuse, it's like the most extraordinary school for communications. And I'm an editor at the newspaper. What? I was in a sorority. I did volunteer work. I did all these things in the name
because you knew, like, I need this for law school. Like, it challenged you to get out there and accomplish all of these things. But all of those things, I mean, if all of us spent our college education with that in mind, like that's really what we should all be doing, no matter what it is that we're going for.
Right, exactly.
It's so valuable. It serves you.
Yeah, so it was weird because that thanks to my wanting to be a lawyer, which didn't work out, I got to experience college in all its glory, which was wonderful. But my point is, going to law school and then again, really enjoying that experience and the volunteerism aspect that actually started in law school because I didn't have a job. I had worked in firms for every summer in college, and then for some weird reason, I did not have a job. When I finally got to law school, I didn't have a law job. And so, I got the best advice from a third-year student, and she said, just go to a courthouse and volunteer, like 10 hours a week and make your money some other way. And I was like, you're brilliant, and that's what I'm going to do. And I literally picked up the phone and called like my town's juvenile court, and I said, hey, you need some help? I'm, a law student. I got 10 hours a week. And they were like, absolutely, because they were overworked, understaffed, and they needed the help. And I got in there, and what I tell my students is this about volunteering is that volunteering opens closed doors of opportunity in a way that nothing else will. And what I mean by that is that no one's going to turn away free help. No one. I'm sorry. They might because they may not have somebody to supervise or train you or whatever. So that might be an overstatement, but most people will not turn away free help. And especially if they're, again, understaffed and they're overworked. And so when I did that again, it was like, when can you start? And the great thing about volunteering is that you can call your own hours. So, I don't have to volunteer 40 hours a week and make nothing. I can volunteer 2 hours a day. And then it keeps the rest of my day free for a paying job. And that doesn't have to be in my area of interest. It can just pay the bills. And so I worked at the Express, or whatever. I just worked retail to earn some money, right? But here's the magic of the volunteering. Again, in action, even in school, was when I was volunteering, I was meeting new people. I was again, processing papers, again, doing nothing special, but I was meeting people. And so lawyers were constantly coming in to file things, and they would talk to me. Oh, hey, where do you go to school? That happens all the time. Oh, where do you go to school? What are you doing? Da, da, da. And I want to say maybe about 2 weeks in, a lawyer came up to me and he introduced himself and he said, what do you do when you're not here? And he wasn't trying to pick me up. It was just more like, what are you doing like for other work? And I told him, and he said, well, I'm looking for a part-time clerk. I can pay you 30 hours a week to work on adoptions. And I thought, there it is. I just hit the mother lode, right? And so what I did was I kept the clerking position at the courthouse, the file clerk position. But then I had the other clerking position that was really what I wanted, and it paid me well. And by the end of the summer, I didn't have just one experience, I had two. And that is what got me my next paid gig in Boston, in downtown Boston, working for the firm that I eventually became an associate for. And so, I tell students all the time, listen, you can have nothing on your resume and still get experience, but it's a matter of just taking the chance and having some courage and not being afraid of no. That's the other thing, is that people are so afraid of rejection, and that's part of life. It's like dating, you know what I mean? It's like you're going to be rejected and you're going to be alone your whole life if you don't try to create relationships.
It's just like dating. Yeah. Well, and I think that's so interesting just how, you had those two experiences because one was volunteering. No one's asking you on your resume, how much did you make during that position?
Exactly.
It's impressive either way. So the experience is experience. And so, I mean, the fact that when you got there and you volunteered, you showed up and you made connections by just being there, but also making yourself invaluable. And people will see that, someone's like, they see you doing your work, that you're in your element and they're like, that's who I want to hire. And that's really how it happens. So, I mean, what a perfect story for everyone out there that is like, I'm not sure how I can take that next step from education to career. Volunteering really bridges the gap.
And I'm sorry, but if people think, oh, well, that's what she did because it was a long time ago and that doesn't work now.
Oh, it works now.
Because my 14-year-old daughter got a summer job doing exactly what I told her to do and volunteer and just pick up the phone and call a place.
Where's she volunteering? That's really cool.
Well, she's too young to work for a lot of places, and she also doesn't drive. She's 14. So we needed to figure out a place where she could work, where she could walk from our house during the summer, because I was like, you're not staying in your bed all day. You need to go and do something, even if it's volunteering. And so there was a place about a half a mile from our house that my daughter's really into crafts and cooking and making slime and all this stuff. And so there was this place.
No, there's that whole slime movement. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Master slime maker, yes. And so there was a place that had opened that ran camps for that. It was like a cooking and a crafting like place. And they ran camps and birthday parties and that kind of stuff. And so so we figured out the contact information. We looked them up online, and she sent them an email and said, hi, my name's Ellie. I'm 14. I love to cook. I love to make slime. Do you need help? Or do you hire, or do you need help? She didn't even ask for hire. She didn't even ask for a job. She just said, I'd love to volunteer for you. And I told her, if you do this, it will line you up for a paid job when you're old enough to work for them. And sure enough, they responded and said, we'd love to meet you. And so she went in and she interviewed, she met them and they talked for a little bit. And I was with her because she's only 14. And they were like, we'd love to have you help us out. And so she did over the summer, and it was great experience for her. It was good for them. They really loved it. They were very appreciative of her help. And
she gets a glimpse of what that career path could be like. Guys, If a 14-year-old can do this, you can do this. Right?
That's right. You can.
Well, so tell me about the object you brought and how it reflects your passion.
Oh, okay. So it's so funny because I was looking around my office, and so I have a microphone.
Cool.
Okay. Now, the reason I have a microphone is because, well, it's a very long, sordid story, but basically, long story short, is that, like I said, communication is one of my strengths. And so I really enjoy presenting. I really love giving, I love teaching. I love performing. I was a dancer when I was younger, a competitive dancer until my knees went out, and then I had to stop. And so when I got to Bentley, we have a radio station, and I thought we should do a radio show. And so I did a radio show about career development, and we had employers on and everything. It was, I don't know, what do we call it? Like at the career lounge. It was some silly thing. And so, we started with that. And then a couple of years ago, I produced a TV show called Hire Love, Hire Love, which is on YouTube, believe it or not. And it's like the View type of a thing with my colleagues. And then my former boss and I were approached to do a podcast. And so that was Counteroffer. And it was a super successful podcast. And so as like in celebration, I got this as like a little token to have on my desk. And I actually now am a singer in a band. And so so the microphone tone is really appropriate for me because it really reflects like all the things that I love to do. I love communicating. I love doing, presentation. Like I said, I love all of it. I love all the multimedia. I do a video series on our website called Ask Alyssa. I just love doing all those things, and I sing. So there it is. So this really, like, I'm very passionate when it comes to communication and all different mediums.
And I can tell, I mean, listeners can tell, you light up when you talk about it. You light up when you're holding this mic. And I think that's really neat that you get to integrate all of your passions into your career and also outside of it, you have hobbies. You can have a career and also be singing not during your day job. You can be part of a band, right? It doesn't need to be your career necessarily. And then I love how you're able to take your creativity and your ideas for, taking it into your work. It's very entrepreneurial in a way, producing your own show or podcast within what you do. I think that's really cool. And you get to be creative and also, spread your knowledge and wisdom to your audience with these different mediums.
Yeah, well, I'm very lucky. I mean, very, very lucky. And we have a culture wall in our office, and it's like all these fun little animations. And it was done with us to create like what our culture is, what's our mission statement, but in visuals. And one of our tiles says "Love Mondays." And that was like the tagline for our podcast and a lot of our messaging, because it kind of relates back to that kind of dreaded feeling of going to work when you just hate it. It's that Sunday night, like that feeling where you think about the next day and you just, I don't want to go to work tomorrow. And so when I started in career services and then eventually got to Bentley, I love coming to work on Monday. Like the thought of going to work on Sunday makes me happy. And so my old boss and I were like, we love Mondays. We want our students to love Mondays too. And that's why it's so important for us to make sure that they really are loving what they do, and that just because you're good at something doesn't mean you should do it. You have to truly love it and want to do it, again, regardless of pay. But the cool thing about it is that if you truly love what you do, you will get paid, you will get promoted, and you will get noticed, right? And all three of those things happened to me and happened to our office, because we all feel that way about what we do. And so what happens when you love what you do, like I said, you get the promotions, you get the accolades. We've won, career services excellence awards for our work. We're a top 5 career services office in the country, like 7 years running or something like that, because people take notice of what you're doing, and it just comes right off of you, right?
And that's because you're making a greater impact, because when you do what you love, there's a ripple effect. And imagine if we were all doing what we loved. Imagine if we were all showing up excited about Monday and really just thrilled to be doing the work that you're going to be doing. Imagine that kind of impact that's going to have on those around you. Just every circle that moves out too on that ripple, right? So the inner circle, the people that you're working with, the feeling that you have around them, the vibes that you guys give to each other, and then the ripple effect when you go home with your family, and then your friends, and then just the people that you're working for, right? So all the students that you're helping, for them to have someone that loves what they do, wow. I mean, that just makes such an impact than somebody else that's just kind of checking in.
Yeah, exactly. Like people that are just showing up and just, again, kind of that check the box, just here to, just do my 8 hours and then I'm out the door.
We've all had that. We've all had that professor that was just checking in. And what was that? I mean, nobody wants to show up for that class,
right.
The class that you dread going to.
Right. Exactly. There's no inspiration, and that's really what we aspire to be, inspirational in what we do and the work that we do with our students, and wanting them to aspire to that happiness, to that loving Mondays kind of feeling, and being excited about the work that you do and being fulfilled by the work that you do. And, it is the old adage that, if you're happy, work doesn't feel like work. It's not work.
Yeah. And I want that adage to beat the one where it's like, that's called work for a reason. It's not supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be work. It's like, no, it could be fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
Why
hey,
not?
why not? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, my husband, I feel badly for him, because he'll always say to me, oh, you have a career, I have a job. And I'm like, no, that's not true. It's hard to kind of get your mind into that space of it's about really being fully present in what you're doing and really loving it. And also when things aren't going well, you have to say to yourself, I have the power to make the change. If it's not working for me, then I need to course correct. I need to do something else, or I need to talk to my manager and kind of say, I really love doing this. This part it's not that I can't do it, or it's just that it's just not good for me, or I'm struggling. Is there someone on my team that can help me with that to make it easier for me? So, so there's a lot of ways to make situations better for yourself, if you're not quite there yet. So,
yeah. Well, so how do you encourage students? Because I know that you really benefited from Strengths Finders. So how do you encourage your students to identify, communicate, and focus on their strengths?
So we have a career development curriculum at Bentley where we have these classes that have been built, and strengths is built into the curriculum of those courses. So they all get it. We're very fortunate that we have a course that we have a seat for every single first year student in one semester. We have 1,000 seats in this class. And these are not like 1,000, and not Syracuse where it's like a 200 student room. We're talking like 35 kids in a class. And the first day we're looking at their reports. They're talking about them. They're talking about them. They are really understanding that, StrengthsFinder is unlike any other assessment in the sense that it's not cookie cutter. It's very, very specific to the individual. Everyone's strengths blend and color the other strengths. And so you're most likely an achiever. If you're a list person, you're probably an achiever. But if you read if you took StrengthsFinder and read the achiever description, it would probably be very different than mine, because your other strengths are, like I said, kind of coloring and influencing. And that's what makes it so unique and so special. And they'll read their reports and they'll say, oh my God, that's so me. And that's the point, is that this is what makes them who they are. And the self-awareness is such a gift, because then they're like, okay, now I know. That's why that's why I'm super focused, or that's why I love to learn, or that's why I really like to think about things, or that's why. And it's not about their character so much, it's about how they're wired. And then understanding, well, okay, this is what I love doing all the time. I do it without thought, to the point of excellence, right? There's this flow to it. So how does that work with the job that I want and the environment that I want to put myself in, and see if they kind of match up? And if they do, wonderful. Let's kind of keep, design thinking that, and beta testing that. If not, all right, well, now's the time to kind of hit the pause button, as you said, and kind of regroup and really think about what it is that makes you happy, and where can that live to make a living, basically.
And I think too, that when you are connecting with people, making courageous connections, I like to call them, through informational interviews, through mentorships, through volunteering positions, when you're making those connections, it's important to speak your strengths, to speak your passion. And if you don't take that time up front to identify what those are, I mean, if you listen to the podcast with Patricia Moreno, we're so quick to, list off all of the areas where we fall short. But could you right now, if I challenged you to write 20 of your strengths down, it might take you a little bit longer, but what an important and valuable exercise to write down 20 of your strengths. So then you can take that and start communicating them, or start figuring out how to connect them to what it is that you want to do. All right. Well, before we go, I have heard that you are a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon expert. So can I challenge you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I love Kevin. I love this because it demonstrates the importance of networking. So
she's going to leverage all of her exceptional movie knowledge, but also teach you guys that networking is really is where it's at, right? If most positions are not being posted, I believe it's 75% of positions are not being posted. Well, then how are people getting those positions? It is networking, right? So, I hope everyone is going to be inspired by this Kevin Bacon example here. Okay, so here's my challenge.
All right.
James Vanderbeek.
James Vanderbeek. Oh, that's Dawson's Creek, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I'm bringing you back to my generation's high school years.
Okay, so Dawson's Creek. He was in Varsity Blues.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. He was in Varsity Blues with Kyle. Oh, God, what's his last name? Kyle. I can see him as clear as day. Oh my God. McLaughlin? No, it's not Kyle McLaughlin. He was in Twin Peaks. Kyle. Oh my Lord in heaven. He was in that movie, Kyle, but I don't know if that will help me. Hold on a minute. You might need to give me a second here.
Okay.
James Vanderbeek. All right. I'm going to go a little rogue here, but I can. I'm going to. Okay, so he was in Dawson's Creek with Michelle Williams. Michelle Williams was in Brokeback Mountain with Anne Hathaway. Anne Hathaway was in The Devil Wears Prada with Meryl Streep, and Meryl Streep was in The River Wild with Kevin Bacon.
And there we have it. I don't even think it was 6 degrees. That was less than 6 degrees.
And there you go. Yeah, well, I like it actually when it's a little more because it makes it challenging for me. So it makes me know that I actually do have some kind of a memory, even if it's for like meaningless things. But I always tell my students after we do this exercise, because I do it with every class, is that your goal is to get to your Kevin Bacon through the people that you know. That's how it works. Start with the people that you know and work out to them, from them to get to the person that's the ultimate kind of prize for you. In my mind, that's Kevin Bacon. So everybody needs to.
Have you met him yet?
That's right. Have I met? No, but I am connected to him. I actually managed to make my own connection to Kevin Bacon. I had a student in CDI. She ran to me after class was well over, like about a year later. She came to me and she said, "Oh my God, I forgot to tell you. My high school teacher is best friends with Keir Sedgwick. And Keir Sedgwick is Kevin Bacon's wife." And I said, "Well, you've got to make this happen. He's got to show up in my class now." So I've yet to have that happen. But when it does, it's going to be the greatest day of my life. Next to the birth of my children and my marriage.
That would be the ultimate gift for someone to have Kevin Bacon show up when you're teaching that lesson.
Yes. That would be the greatest day. I could die a happy woman after that happens. So I'm putting it out there. I teach in Jenison at Bentley. That's where you can find me.
If you're listening, you want to, have your mitzvah or act of kindness for the day here, this is how you can do it. Well, so I want to encourage all of our listeners right now. I want to encourage you right now. You're listening to this podcast. You have the ability to open up at least an hour or two to volunteer and start volunteering in something that you want to do. So intentional volunteering, right? Can you, if you're like, I've always wanted to work for a museum. I'm here in San Diego. I'm passionate about working for a museum. I love Balboa Park. Could you volunteer and be a docent? Could you volunteer at the Museum of Man? Absolutely. People are looking for free help and they're very unlikely to turn it down. So make that courageous connection today and offer it. If Alyssa's 14-year-old daughter can do it, you can do it.
That's right.
And thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate you letting us be here for you on your career journey, because this is not a solo journey. And we're so happy to help you, and just know that you can reach out. We want to help you be successful in this career journey, help you discover your strengths, find your why, and connect those to your passion career. Remember, when you speak your passion, doors open. Thank you so much, Alyssa, for coming on the show. And
thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. And be sure to reach out if you have any questions. You can find me at Amanda@findyourpassioncareer.com. All right. Bye, everyone.